Netanyahu, I don't think actually has an interest in, again, occupying Gaza fully, because it means he would have to be in charge of 2 million Palestinians. Now, I don't think that we should look at this current government as a government that will be in place once all of this is over. I'm pretty sure that there'll be an election. So we might look at a completely different government, which won't contain the far-right parties and won't have an interest in actually occupying Gaza. But Blinken is now walking a fine line. He's trying now to both appease the Palestinians and the rest of the world by calling for a humanitarian pause, but he's also making sure that he stands on Israel's side, and he's not going to try and impose a ceasefire. As he said today, the word ceasefire, for those who suggest that, they should come up with a solution about what to do with Hamas and the hostages, because Hamas cannot be in charge after a ceasefire of any sort.
How close is Israel to capturing the Hamas leader, and were they to capture or indeed neutralize, I think is the term now used, him, what would that mean? Is that end of conflict?
It isn't the end of conflict. First of all, we don't know where Yahya Sinwar is, but we do know that Israeli soldiers are hunting him now. The prime minister said he compared him to Hitler and his last days in a bunker, and that it's just a matter of time before they get to him. But even if they do assassinate him, which they will, it will continue. The Israeli military operation will continue until every single member of Hamas is either killed or thrown in jail. That is the ultimate goal. And as Netanyahu also said, Israel will maintain security control with the Gaza Strip, but he fell short of using the word occupation, because inside Israel, there's still a big debate about what should actually happen. There are obviously those on the far right who would like to go back, take over Gaza and resettle. And then there are those who are more moderate who actually wouldn't like to have control with 2 million Palestinians. They would rather give the keys to the Palestinian Authority.
And in terms of the response to the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken's words, the instruction, as it were, that Gaza cannot, in Blinken's words, be run by Israel or indeed Hamas once the conflict is over. How's that likely to play out with Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli government?
So Netanyahu, I don't think actually has an interest in, again, occupying Gaza fully, because it means he would have to be in charge of 2 million Palestinians. Now, I don't think that we should look at this current government as a government that will be in place once all of this is over. I'm pretty sure that there'll be an election. So we might look at a completely different government, which won't contain the far-right parties and won't have an interest in actually occupying Gaza. But Blinken is now walking a fine line. He's trying now to both appease the Palestinians and the rest of the world by calling for a humanitarian pause, but he's also making sure that he stands on Israel's side, and he's not going to try and impose a ceasefire. As he said today, the word ceasefire, for those who suggest that, they should come up with a solution about what to do with Hamas and the hostages, because Hamas cannot be in charge after a ceasefire of any sort. So he's really now in diplomatic deep water, I would say, because there's so much pressure on him from the international system. And at the same time, he is, or the US is Israel's closest ally and has promised to be standing next to Israel through all of this.
You mentioned the arguments against a ceasefire. Yesterday, we heard the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres call Gaza a graveyard for children. How does widespread international condemnation of Israel like that, from someone in his position, affect actions in the war and indeed the end goals?
I would say almost none. It has basically no effect
So
on Israel.
Israel has no interest in what the UN has to say?
Not really. First of all, Israel has continuously said for the past many, many years that the United Nations is hypocritical in many, many ways. And this latest war between Hamas and Israel, and again, this is not my opinion, I'm just saying what the Israelis are saying. They are saying that the fact that the only thing the United Nations cares about right now is a ceasefire. For them, they could have Hamas controlling Gaza indefinitely. They don't really care as long as there's a ceasefire. So Israel is listening to the United States because, unlike the UN, the United States actually has some power, some leverage over Israel due to the financial and military support. So the UN is just it's an entity that Israel doesn't respect, and we've heard this over and over in the past couple of weeks with the Israeli UN envoy calling for Guterres to resign, calling him shameless for comparing Hamas and Israel to each other.
And we've just been talking about the US and Israel being in discussion about the future of Gaza. But Hussam Zomlot, a leading diplomat and head of the Palestinian mission to the UK, told my breakfast colleagues this morning that the Palestinian Liberation Organization is the legitimate government representative of the people of Gaza, have a seat at the UN. Here he is speaking.
So it is the PLO that is the government of the state of Palestine, and the PLO is the umbrella organization that represents all Palestinians and has most of Palestinian factions except Hamas. And therefore, yes, Palestine and the Palestinian people have legitimate sole representatives.
How is that position seen in Israel, Jotam? That was Hussam Zomlot.
Well, that is obviously the better of the worst options. Israel would rather see the Palestinian Authority be in control of Gaza, but there are many, many people in Israel who also see, and I have to also add Palestinians, both Israelis and Palestinians, that consider the Palestinian Authority as a very corrupt entity. In fact, most Palestinians would like for it to just hand the keys over to someone else. They would like for President Abbas to resign. But inside Israel, it is a necessary partner because it is, as he said, it is the legitimate power in as much as you can be legitimate when you don't have an election for 15 years. But it is seen as a partner that you can cooperate with, which Israel does in the West Bank. But it's not something that Israelis aren't happy about the Palestinian Authority. Many see them as complicit in terror because they pay salaries and they pay financial retribution to terrorists' families after they have been killed. So it's not a popular entity in Israel, and it's really not a popular entity among Palestinians.
Jotam Confino, the foreign editor of Jewish News and our voice of reason on the program. Thank you very much for joining me on Times Radio.